Hello and welcome back to aud205. This is class 8, and this is going to be the first of a 3-part series here. We're going to kind of work through the process of getting the voiceover, the music, and the sound design all to work for our movie trailer. So I'm going to bring that in. This is the work picture that you guys got last week, and we're going to create a multi-track session here. Call this aud205 class 8. All right, we're gonna drop in our work picture here. This start at a minute in, I think. So, all right. And the QuickTime was distributed with some music in it. You guys are free to use this or something else. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is load in our voiceover. And my buddy Kevin did this. He did a great job. There's going to be a Chutes and Ladders VO123, and you can pick which one you like. I like version 1 personally, so I'm going to bring that one in. And we're going to drop this on track 2. I'm just going to start organizing this a little bit, and I'm going to make this our voiceover track yellow, and then our music, make that a green. Drop the music track under the voiceover just because that's how I like to work. And here's our voiceover. I'm going to mute the music for now. So here's what it sounds like.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and Ladders.
All right, so we know that's a little too short, but we can work on that. So this was recorded at my studio at my house, and so I just know from working here that there's going to be a little bit of noise in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and do a noise reduction pass on this because I'm going to compress the living snot out of it, and the cleaner it is, the better. So we're going to go to VST3 restoration. I'm going to use the iZotope RX Advanced bundle just to work with this so you guys get another perspective on this. So I like to work in advance, and I like to crank this up to the best. I think it sounds really good. So just like you capture noise print using the built-in stuff, this you have to teach it what the noise is. So you just hit learn and then play over it, and it picks that up. And then you should be able to just play over the affected area to see how it sounds.
Where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and Ladders.
So there's a couple little dropouts as it went because recording the class and doing the plugin, apparently my computer's not fast enough to do all of it. So, and this algorithm is really heavy. It needs quite a bit of CPU power, so it's certainly designed to be done in an offline sort of way. All right, so I'm going to apply that. I think that sounds good as the base. This one takes longer to render than the built-in one as well. All right, so I think that did a good job. So I'm going to go back to the multi-track editor, and then I'm going to start affecting this. And I'm going to go pretty severe on this just because I think it's fun. You guys can certainly use what you've learned to affect this as much as you want. So the first thing I'm going to use is Vocal Rider, and I'm going to drop that into the thing, but I'm just going to use it as a placeholder, and I'll show you why. If I go ahead and write this automation to the clip, and I set this to write mode, and I just record over this for a second.
In a world where games are making people bored.
Looks like we need to feed the plugin a little bit more information because it's sitting in the +6, so I'm going to give it a little bit more to work with.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and ladders.
All right, so if I switch this over to read, close this for now. If I go to the vocal writer fader, and I see all this automation that it wrote. Now, if I go to edit this clip and I start moving it around within our track to match up with the picture better. So say we want this clip here and this clip, this clip here. The automation that was associated, this automation was associated with this audio and it didn't move with it. So I got to wait to write the automation for the vocal writer until we place all this later, but that's fine. I'll just remember to do that. So I'm gonna hide this again. All right, so that's just a placeholder for now. So the next thing I'm gonna do is actually pitch shift this down a little bit to add a little bit more kind of girth to Kevin's voice. And you can do this using the built-in stuff. I'm gonna start showing you guys some third-party stuff that you can play around with. If you, like me, you're always looking for something new to buy. So these are just some plugins that I've found that I like to use a lot, and I think they sound really good. So the first one is by DMG Audio. It's called Pitch Funk, and this will do a lot. This is a pretty crazy plugin, and it comes with an immense amount of presets that you can do tons of different stuff with. One of them that's really fun is the Dub Thunder Gate. So that on a voice, this is what it sounds like.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and ladders.
So you can have a lot of fun with this one. I'm going to go back to just a normal flat plugin, and all I'm going to do is actually just use this plugin's pitch shifting engine. So this plugin was written by Dave Gamble, and he's a longtime audio guy. He wanted to write a pitch shifting plugin that mimicked the old hardware pitch shifters. I feel like this one does a really good job. So I'm just going to make sure. Just need to turn this effects mix down. I think that's about, so this is what it's going to sound like.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and ladders.
Yeah, so I was just kind of playing around with it. But yeah, that's all I'm going to use it for, is just a little pitch down. The next thing I'm going to do is this plugin by Cush Audio, and it's called the UBK1. And this is kind of a secret weapon in audio right now. So how this plugin works is it's all derived from this headroom knob. And the more I use it, the more I love it. This thing is crazy. But here's what we're going to do. So we're going to play over this a little bit, and we'll need to adjust this again once we set the vocal writer a little bit closer. But for now, it's at least close. So this ample parameter, the little green light flashes when it's getting enough. And so you adjust the headroom here.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything.
Cool. So now that you set your amp, so each one of these does its own kind of thing, and the saturation feeds into the compression, which then feeds into the density, but you have a wet to dry for each one of these, and so the possibilities are pretty crazy with this thing. So this acts in its most basic sense as a dynamics processor. Think of it as a compressor with a lot of other fun goodies built into it. So the first step is to turn up the saturation.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens.
So that just kind of beefs up his voice. I'm actually going to back that down quite a bit. So only 20% of the plugin is being applied and 80% of the original sound is coming through. So here's what that sounds like.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything.
Just kind of fattens it up some. So then this is the compressor. We'll give this a good punch.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from...
That's a nice, crazy, splatty compressor. And I'm just going to use about a 50-50. Here's a 55-45 as a preset. I think that's pretty close.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything.
So it's not necessarily louder as far as volume goes, but it's definitely kind of more intense. All right, last one is density. And I'm going to use this on the mids to punch them up some. So give that a good little flavor there.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from...
So I think that's great. This thing's great on a number of stuff. Drums, music, sound effects. You can use it to control some stuff that's pretty wild or, make it more intense, whatever. So this is the UBK one. All right, next, I've been playing around lately with the Alloy2 plugin. And this is a bug that they need to fix. It won't open on the first attempt. So this is an equalizer, transient shaper, exciter, dynamics, second dynamics, de-essing, and limiter all in one. And so, pretty powerful plugin. I'm going to set up a bit of a preset that I kind of worked out earlier just so that you guys don't have to sit and watch me fiddle with it. 0.9 and 0.7. Okay, so then I went on to the transient shaper, so we can listen to that real quick. It's going to be pretty bright and...
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything.
So nice and punchy. Next I went to the transient shaper, and this has a great transient shaper. It's actually a multi-band transient shaper. I just kind of touched up a few of these here, so let's see what that does.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played.
All right. And then even though we compressed with the UBK one, I wanted to do another round of compression just to clean up the very top end of it. So brought down to about -20 or so. Do like a 4-to-1, and there's this is two different compressing settings, actually a bunch of different compressing, but this is peak to RMS. The RMS, kind of what we were talking about in the first class in the metering, the root mean square. This is the average. So are you compressing the average level when it gets to this high, or the peak when it gets to this high? And so I think an RMS compressor usually sounds more transparent, personally. And then I like their vintage curve on this guy. And then crank this up to 25 or so. 150. And then, so that should give us a nice controlled sound.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything.
I think we're getting a little too punchy on these transient shapers. I'm actually going to back them down some. See if that cleans up some of those clicks.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything.
Yeah, I think that's working. So then de-essing. And I like that this has, kind of my signal chain, EQ, Dynamics, DS, so I can just take care of this in one plugin. So let's see how that sounds. I think he might be a little bit higher up, but we can find that.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and ladders.
Getting a little bit of a playback issue, and I wonder if it's...
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and ladders.
All right, so let's see if we can get this to fit into our story here. So... guessing these first couple lines will probably work in that initial section there. So let's see how this fits in.
In a world where games are making people bored,
so let that ring out a second, then
comes an event that will change everything.
Maybe we can get that in before the reveal of the slide.
Comes an event that will change everything.
Where's the slide?
Comes an event that will change everything. See what happens when we go from the players to the played.
So I'll slide this guy down.
Chutes and ladders.
So I think the original intent from Danny and the guys doing AFX 218 and 219 was to actually only have the voiceover at the very, very end of it and to let the music and sound design fill in the middle in the beginning. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit more to play around with as far as a voiceover, as far as placement and, where you can use the voiceover to tell the story of the trailer a little bit more. So, so feel free to figure out where you want to put this. I think I like it towards the end here.
See what happens when we go from the players to the played. Chutes and ladders.
Yeah, I think that sounded pretty good. We can work on the mix of these two later when we get to the mix. So let's start sound designing. So these first couple images are just still images, and you can add a room tone or whatever, but there's not really anything to augment on these unless you want to put some kids talking or laughing, or it looks like there's some rain going on outside that you could add. But the music's pretty ominous to start out here, so.
In a world where games are making people bored.
So that's really our first moment of change. And so if I take, so go to ambience 2, there's some traffic sounds down here. that I think sound pretty good. I like this ambience traffic above bridge. So we can drop this guy in. So we can do our one frame fade up on it.
Comes an event that
Let's adjust this for now. I think that works for the opening shot. Maybe just a little quieter. So we can change perspectives on our ambiences so that you kind of feel the picture change. All right, so then if we find another city ambience that's maybe a park. I like that guy. Turn that up a little bit just to make the ambiences match in volume. All right, so then we're out of this one. So now we're on a street, so let's go back down to traffic. That may work with our car backing up. Let's see if that lines up at all. So the car backing up sound comes in around here, so we can make our edit here. Do a nice crossfade between them again. So you can kind of see how this file is actually a stereo file, and there's a left to right pan as the car goes across. But I don't want that. I think it's distracting, even though we're not going to use all the file. In our case, our car is actually center frame, so we want to keep that. We don't want to add a perspective shift. So I'm going to go into waveform, and so as far as I know, Audition doesn't have a stereo tool to do something like this, to take a stereo file and collapse the width on it. But fortunately, there are a few. Voxengo makes one that is essentially an inline mid-side encoder-decoder. And so you can turn down the side information and basically just make it mono. And this one's free. Alternatively, you can make it more stereo by turning up the side, and it'll sound a little phasey. But so that's one way to go about it. So there's another great tool. So there's another great free tool that's out there by Flux, and they make something called the Stereo tool. And this one basically does the same thing, but you have your width, so you can make it mono, but then you can also just turn in the left to right, so it's not as wide, and so you still get a little bit of your stereo image. It's just not, it's pretty narrow up here instead of being full left and full right, that kind of thing. So you can adjust this, however you want to. Yeah, in my case, I think. So I think that looks good. I'm going to apply that to the file. Now we have a more mono car reverse here. Just the fade on that. All right. So now we need some wind for our under industry. If we go down to tools, they had an air compressor. Let's see, air escaping from compressor. I think that might work for us. Got the head off that guy. Off with his head. Let's see. All right. So we got to affect this. So there's another free EQ that I really like, and I've been using it a lot. And it's, if you go to pluginalliance.com, I think it's plugin-alliance.com, you can download this Clean Sweep V2. And all it is it's a high pass and low pass filter. Very easy to use. It even has this little joystick if you want to try and figure out how it works. But in this case, I just want to low pass the highs and get rid of some of that brittleness. All right, so without it. So it just kind of softens the top up some. And then I'm going to add some low end to it. We can use our Old Faithful here. Sweet. I think that'll work. So go back to multi-track. Let's see how that fits. Seems to work okay. I would probably finesse that even further, but I don't want to waste too much time on one effect. We're back to city ambience. So we can recycle some of these since it's going to be the same town again. So there was one from up top. Yeah, this first one. So I'm just going to copy it and then find my first frame here. Paste that. There's another rooftop shot, so I think we can use the same effect again. It's not that big of a perspective shift. So we'll crossfade this with our ambience from the ground, which I believe is... So this one, I like the perspective of this one, but it has the car backing up. And so we want something new. And I believe there's... Okay, so we can assume it's a city and there's some distant traffic, but we don't necessarily have to hear them up close. So if we go back to ambiences, I think under traffic, there was some stuff that's a little bit further away. Intersection. That feels good. That's nice and sparse. All right, let's see how this works. Crank that up some. It's actually going to be a featured effect once we get there, so... A little too long. All right, so then we're back up on the roof. So picking the right tone of your background can set up the tone of the whole piece. So if you pick dark ambiences, then it's going to have a dark feel. And if you pick light, airy ambiences, it's going to have a light feel. And if you favor birds over cicadas, you get the idea. You have a lot of say in how the piece is going to feel just by picking the right background. Which all goes back to the story, and we're all in the business of telling stories. So make sure you are either, that what you're choosing is adding to the story, not necessarily distracting from it. So we're gonna... So we have a harbor. So harbors have, there's a lot you can do with this. You can do seagulls, you can do boats, even just water lapping or just surf, the sound of surf. Let's see what we got. We got ocean shore. So I think I just want a distant city, kind of like what we used at the very beginning. Because I don't want to change the mood of it too much as we go through this. Having a distant city shot, I don't want to pull people out of the drama by introducing... so that's actually the same effect as what we had. Never mind. All right, so this one here says traffic near station with police cars. That's actually kind of nice because when people hear distant sirens, that usually tunes them into something being wrong. So if we hear a distant city with police cars, then that adds some of that drama for us. So let's add this in. So we just want to fix our crossover point so it actually happens on the picture change. There. Perfect. So let's use the end of this. So it just sounds too close. I want to use a little bit more of the distance. Yeah. A little bit more of the distance to my advantage. And then we can cut to it here. We can extend those police sirens into the shot. Let's see how this is working against the music. So it's probably a good idea to check this against the voiceover and the music as you work to make sure that these aren't going to compete against the music and the voiceover.
In a world where games are making people bored, comes an event that will change everything.
So you can see how already the backgrounds kind of bring it to life, and it feels really strong even already. So obviously this is going to be we got a few of these scenes that we can already start sound designing. As the class finishes, they're going to continue to post more of these finished shots with the characters and whatnot in them. So there's some explosions on this shot and some ladders falling in, and then our little title design piece here. So I think that's a good place to pick up next week. Next week we will dig into doing some specific stuff on this shot and this shot, and then we'll save these last two, the ladders and the title, for the last class. So, as always, if you guys have any questions, hit me up in the forums, and I will talk to you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.